So, thanks everybody for joining us again today. Today we have casting director Kim Graham, and she works in New York and does a lot of casting work. She was introduced to me from Polly McKee, who's another amazing actress that I had the opportunity to interview last week. But Kim, thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself and your work, and why you love doing what you do.
Great. Well, yeah. So I've been with Judy Henderson Casting since 2003. When I started casting, we did a lot of commercials, voiceover on camera. We did voices and motion capture for video games, a lot of independent film, off-Broadway theater, and I know I'm missing something though. Film theater, commercials. And then we naturally segued into television, did a couple pilots, and then a show landed in our lap called Homeland. And I've been primarily working on that for the last 8 seasons. So we're wrapping it up right now, and we'll be finishing season 8 probably beginning of October.
That's
And
awesome.
I love casting because I love hiring actors. So.
It's so funny though, because a lot of times, I mean, especially new actors who don't know a lot of casting directors, they always almost look at casting directors as kind of like the enemy. They're like, they're the gatekeepers and they're keeping me out from being able. And it's so funny because I feel like
No,
you feel like it's the other way, right?
it's total. Oh my gosh! I've listened. We need you, and you need us, and that's we all have our parts to play in the process. But no, I mean that's one of the great things about casting is you get to give people jobs, and
Mm.
you love the actor. That's why most of us do these. Do casting. So get that silly thought out of your head, actors, because that's not true. We're
Yeah,
your fans.
that's awesome. What would you say are like one or two things that you're most proud of in your own career?
Oh gosh. Well, most proud of. Well, I'm pretty proud of Homeland. That's been a real dream to work on, and I'm working with the very best in our field,
Hmm.
and I feel like in a way I get to go to Harvard for free. It's just been really fun. I've learned so much, and it's been a privilege. Um, my background before casting was uh, music theater, and then I segued into opera and sang professionally for about 10 years. So I think it was kind of fun. Years ago, we worked with Julie Andrews on a revival of The Boyfriend, so that was kind of neat to go back in my world a little bit that I
Nice.
knew. So I'd say those two things, really.
Cool. So thinking about just your past time and all of the experiences that you have had, would you say that there's any stories or any situations that kind of stick out to you as like, this was an amazing experience bringing on a specific actor, or like, was there any like cool moments where you met someone and you were like, this person is perfect for the part, or anything like that that kind of stands out?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm sure there are a ton of them, but um, I mean, I think it's having done it long enough, it's nice to kind of look back and see like the actors that hadn't quite popped yet. That you were bringing in for your independent film or whatnot. So I think it's fun to look back and remember like Elizabeth Moss coming in. And we booked her on a couple independent films, and Judy and I just thought she was so special, and so it's been really fun to watch her career, blossom.
Hmm.
Um, I remember John Bernthal coming in, and he was sort of a newbie to the business, and his manager, asked for us to see him for a film, and he came in, and we were just like, wow, this guy's special. So, yeah, I think those are the kind of things that I think about,
Hmm.
I don't, find somebody on the street and be like, you're going to be a star, sometimes it's just timing, and, like I just finished a film, and a friend of mine out in LA asked me if I would meet with one of his students, and who happened to be in New York, and I took a meeting with him, and I had a role that I thought he would be right for in the film, and I asked him to come back the next day, and he booked it. So, I mean, that, crazy things like that can happen.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome. I actually have a quick question because sometimes, or actually pretty frequently, a lot of actors don't know the exact process of how the casting works. So, I mean, some of them who've been in the industry longer do, but some of them kind of think like, I go in and I audition, and if they like me, I'll come for a callback, and if they like me again, then the casting director will just like say you're hired. But that might not necessarily be exactly how it works. So, do you mind kind of running us through like what does a typical casting look like from like beginning to end?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on the project. I'll speak specifically to like Homeland. So usually, we'll get a script, we'll read it, and then the writer's room will set up a tonal call, and we'll all get on the phone. It'll be the showrunner, the director of the episode, the line producer, the writing team, and casting, and we'll kind of go through the breakdown of any characters that are coming in. Maybe flesh it out a little bit just so we understand a little bit more specifically what they're looking for. Once that's done, we'll post a breakdown to our agents and managers, and then the submissions start to come in, and we will sit down and go through headshots and resumes and reels and whatnot. So we'll narrow that list down, and we'll probably narrow it down a few more times, and then we'll set up a session. And we might have some people self-tape if they're not in town. And then after that session, we'll go through all the tapes as well, and we will select probably 2 or 3 for each character, and we will present them to the team, and they will chime in. They may say, "Great, I like John Doe, but let's see some more people." So we'll continue that process until we finally get our person. So I do find that they may like that one person in the first batch that I showed, but they want to be confident that there's not somebody else out there that they're missing, so we'll continue our search, and then sometimes they'll circle back and say, yeah, no, I really liked him, let's go with him. Yeah. And then through that, we'll wait for our schedule, our board, and once we get that, that'll help us set, for what dates they're going to work. When that person is selected, we will present it to the studio and the network for approval. So it still goes through another step. And then once that approval happens, we'll make the offer to the actor's agent or manager. And then hopefully they accept it, and we book them, and that's it. And we go on to the next episode.
Yeah, that's cool. I mean, it's a very multi-step process, and a very big process, especially when you're talking about narrowing down so many submissions and everything just to cast for one film. And I think that a lot of actors sort of, they think about it from their perspective as like, I'm going out on this audition, but really like this audition is just like one tiny piece of a huge process in order to find a role for like one project, basically.
Oh yeah, I mean, it takes a village, especially on something like a television show. You have so many people. I mean, if you're doing like just a little independent film, it might be you, the director, and the producer. But I think you have to think about it in terms of it's great if you want to book the job. Who doesn't? But you're also booking the office. You're going to get on our radar if we like your work. Even if you end up not getting the role for whatever reason, that's not in your control. But if we like your work, you're going to now be in our mind Rolodex, so that if something else come down in the future, we'll bring you in. And that's really what you want to do, is establish the relationships with these casting offices.
Mm-hmm.
Because there'll be another new project with a new team coming on board. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. So you mentioned earlier narrowing down your lists, and I myself, as a filmmaker, I've been on the same side of the table in terms of casting, and I'll get, even for an unpaid role in a small, short, like student film back when I was in college, I would get like 200 submissions from actors, and I would have to look through, and I would typically see, maybe like 50% of the people who submit don't have a professional headshot, or they don't have like anything on their resume, or they just like seem super unprofessional. then I sort of try to narrow it down a little bit more, like based on what they look like and their real and experience, and then I bring them in. But how do you actually narrow down that list, efficiently? Because there's so many, right?
Right. Well, I mean, you said you had 200. I was like, I would love to have just 200. I typically get, I could get over 3,000 on one roll. So what I usually would do is I'll kind of, give it a day for all the agents and managers to send their stuff up, and then I'll start looking, and I'll kind of do a quick scan. And anybody that I know that pops out to me, you know what I mean? Like, oh, he'd be great for the role. Let me tag him, and I'll go through that, and then I'll go back and I'll start to look at people that like are interesting to me that maybe I don't know their work, and that's when I'll look at the resume, I'll look at the reel, and then I'll select some folks from there. Sometimes I will do a search on Actors Access as well, especially if it's a skill set, a specific skill set that I need, a language or firearms or something. So I'll do a search as well. And then from there, depending on what that result is, then I'll go again and I'll start to weed out people. So like I said, it's kind of a multi-layer process that you go through. And because we have to work so quickly, you really got to make sure that headshot is, pops, because that's the first thing that we see. And if we're interested, then we'll read your resume. If you have a reel, we're going to watch it, or clips or whatever. So, really just making sure you're easy for us to look up and find. If in terms of like your profile on Actors Access, I don't typically post my breakdown on Actors Access, given the nature of our show and the timing. As you can tell, just agent manager submissions alone, I can yield up to 3,000 on average for one role. So it's a bit daunting. Definitely a good time manager. But yeah, that's a typical way of doing it, I think.
Yeah, no, that's excellent. I mean, it is 3,000 is a lot of people, and especially with the fact that you said that doesn't even include, like, if you were just posting it out there and they didn't have to go through agents, it would be 30,000 or something.
Well, yeah, I mean, I did like a no pay play, years ago. And I posted it on Actors Access because I knew the agents weren't going to submit because there was no money for them,
Yeah.
And I was amazed at how many submissions I got. I was like, God, people just want to work. I mean, even if they not getting paid, they just want to, be doing something, So it's kind of amazing.
Yeah, exactly. I also thought that it was really interesting what you said. Oh my gosh, now my mind is blanking. The thing how you were talking about the special skill sets, and you went onto Actors Access, or you'll go on there and search for that. When I was talking to agent Margaret Emery, she was saying the same thing. She's like, you'll get noticed if you have very unique skills. You want to list them, even if there's something like totally random. She's like you can blow up balloons and make those, like animals out of balloons and stuff. She's like, you can list that stuff on there because sometimes they need that skill set, and that can be your way into the door.
Oh, absolutely. And actually, this leads me to the notes section of your submissions on Actors Access. That's really a great opportunity for you to highlight something like that. You know what I mean? So that that's going to pop for me when I first see your headshot, and it'll say, I can one-arm juggle. You know what I mean? And then I don't have to go into the resume deep to find that skill because, that's one of the things I'm looking for, so you can kind of highlight it. Mm-hmm. And that's a great way to do it in the notes section. And I would use that note section for things like I can be a local hire. I own a pair of roller skates if, you need somebody that has that, or I have firearm skills, or, stuff like that. Because sometimes that can get lost a little bit in the special skills. I find some people when they highlight their special skills through Actors Access format, it could be like 2 paragraphs long of, they do everything.
Yeah, you want it to be very. You know what I mean? Yeah, you want it to be very
like easy. Get buried. So it just really helps me, I kind of through that highlight to
Yeah.
find you.
Easy, sort of like bullet points, something that's fast. And I would say the same thing for like a cover letter on a submission or something. You want it easy to read. Some people submit like 3-page long essays about themselves.
Yeah, exactly. Short and sweet. I mean, we're seeing less and less of those, 8x10 submission with the cover letter thing anymore. But, I think postcarding is effective, and, just, make it easy for me to find you. You know what I mean? Like your website or, phone number, email, things like that. Sometimes I find, like say even if somebody submits themselves through Actors Access and I'm interested in them and there's nowhere to contact them.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, or I'm doing Google searches and stuff, and it's like, just don't make me work that hard, or you're not going to get even a chance to audition.
Yeah.
Because that just wastes my time. So, not to be negative, Nelly, but I'm just saying, make it easy for us to find you.
Yeah. Do you think that for actors, if they're typed as something specific, like let's say an actor typically likes to play or is really good at playing cop roles, if they own their own cop like uniform or outfits or costumes, should they list that as that beneficial or helpful for the casting?
I mean, you can. It depends on the project. I mean, if you're doing a ultra low budget film, sometimes they'll, it's easier for them if you have the wardrobe accessories available. You know what I mean? As opposed to them having costume find them for you. Yeah, I mean, it's not going to hurt you to put it on there. You know what I mean?
Okay. And I want to move into this next section, which is just like when you're casting actors, what are some of the top things that you are looking for? Let's say obviously the actor has to be able to act and has to play the role, but sort of like outside of that or in addition to that, what are some key things that you want to see in someone that you're bringing on?
Well, I think you always want to lead with being the kind of actor that people want to work with. Mm-hmm. That somebody who's open and flexible, that's able to take direction and welcome direction and not feel like insulted if they come in and do the scene and then I give them an adjustment, or you know what I mean, or try to explain why they made that choice, get defensive about it. Those things just don't help you. You know what I mean? You have to trust that I know what I'm looking for, and that when I've got it, I've got it. And come in and do your work and leave, and be prepared, be on time. The kind of the obvious stuff.
Yeah. Okay. And sometimes, especially for smaller independent productions, actors, let's say an actor has another skill set, for instance, on an independent production. An actor is like, hey, I have connections to these distributors, or I have like 20,000 social media followers that I can promote the film out to. Those can definitely be beneficial for a smaller production. But is that at all ever looked at as something valuable? Any sort of like additional thing besides their acting ability and professionalism, is that looked upon favorably by casting directors for larger projects?
So, obviously, this is just my opinion. I do know that it exists, that are projects that are asking people to come with, Twitter followers or Facebook or Instagram or whatnot, to help with the film. I don't work on those. For me, I feel that, if we just get the best actors for your project, that those things will come. And I don't know how much of value they are to me personally, because at that point, you have the ability to buy followers. So, it's sort of invalidating in that way. I didn't come into this profession casting that way. I came into it to find the best actors for the film, without all those prerequisites. So I know it exists. I know people do cast that way. I usually take a pass and tell them that I'm not a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. That's great. That's great for people to be aware of, because sometimes people do kind of they're like, what other things can I provide? And again, they're valuable for certain projects, but not all the time. And you really need to find out, what does the person who's casting actually value? It's like I've joked about it with my team in terms of like some of our headshot photography work. For a long time, we would send out some other like information, like, oh, here's a great tip on how to look great on camera or something, and here's this and that, and people, like certain people who were shooting with us, did not care at all, whereas other people were like, wow, this is amazing information, thank you so much. And so, like, there's no sort of magic thing like, oh, if you do this, then you'll instantly have access to a lot more bookings and everything. So it's good to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, here again, we're an industry of opinions, right? So, everybody's going to find that, depending on the project, how they want to approach it, and what are the things that they are required or requiring of it to make happen. I just was reminded, I was opening up some submissions, and there was this like department on a big agency that I was like, oh, what is that? I opened it up, and one of my, I think it was my assistant, she said, oh, those are influencers. And I was like, oh God, we're doing that now. They're creating departments at these agencies for just influencers who have no acting skills whatsoever. They just have a lot of followers on Instagram or whatever. I found that really interesting. I thought, well, if that's where we're headed, then I might be doing something else with my life, because I just don't count that way.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like you're selling out you're going to take someone who might have more followers, who might not be as good of an actor for the part, and that's not exactly as good. So, but it is a truth in the industry, depending, again, who you're talking to. So, so I'd like to move into this next section, which is just talking a little bit about mistakes that actors make. What would you say are like one or two of the biggest mistakes actors make from your perspective in trying to move their careers forward, or, even in just like auditioning? Whatever you'd like to talk about here is fine.
Well, I think mistakes are, go back to what I said, not being prepared, not being on time, making excuses. I only had so much time with the scene. Okay, well, then I'm already going to go in with a low expectation. But maybe you'll be fine, but you've already set it up. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, if you're sick and you're not on your game, like, just don't come in. Don't waste anybody's time. There'll be another project. Other mistakes. I mean, those are kind of like the basics. Like I said, not doing all the stuff I told you to do. I guess that would be it.
Yeah. No, that's good. I mean, especially the sick thing. I mean, it's definitely interesting. I mean, if you're sick and you go to, say, like a class or something to meet a casting director or an agent there, and you're like, I know that I'm sick, but I really wanted to make it into the class just to have the opportunity to say hello. That, in my opinion, at least, would be a little bit different than going to an actual audition where you know that you're really wasting the other person's time.
Well, yeah, because also, look, most of us don't have our creatives in the room with us now. We work very remotely. So, the result that's showing up on that screen is what they're going to be, looking at. And if your energy's not right behind it, or, you know what I mean, or you just don't look right, that you can just kill it for yourself.
Mm-hmm. I think that's good to be aware, though, that actors should keep in mind that, especially for the bigger projects, when they're auditioning for the camera, the real the directors and the people who are at the putting the whole project together are not listening to all of your stories and are not listening to all the reasons of things that are going on. All they care about is what you look like.
Well, it's it. I tell actors all the time, they say, well, if I come into my audition, do I have to be off book? Can I just sort of paraphrase? Or can I, and I'm like, you don't understand. They are buying your audition.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's excellent.
That's the result they're looking for. It's not about, oh, well, she's got the idea of it, but we don't have rehearsal time. Especially in television, you show up, you got to hit your mark and do your thing, and do exactly what you did at the audition that got you the role.
Yeah. So the next section is a little bit about, specifically on auditioning. I mean, we've talked about a few top tips that you can give surrounding the, not focused on the acting. Do you have any tips related specifically to the acting or anything that we haven't, sort of discussed? Any tips that you could give to an actor who struggles to either get called back or, as a second thing, maybe they do get called back all the time, but they just never book it? What would you say?
Well, you're getting called back. It's pretty good, That's good, I think we're just so hard on ourselves, and I think sometimes actors focus on the wrong things and things that they don't have control over. And so what I usually tell people is, look, the only control that you have is what you do in that audition. That's it. Mm-hmm. So you got to go and do your work, and then you have to leave and forget about it because it goes to something else, to something else, to something else. I think that you should be doing something every day toward your craft, whether it's see a play, watch a film, read a script, memorize lines, put out postcards, do a mailing, whatever. Always make sure that this is your full-time job because there's a lot of competition out there and you'll get forgotten about and lost if you don't do that and keep that muscle active. Mm-hmm. So if you're not, in something, you should be in a class. Yeah. Working on your craft.
That makes sense. I mean, you can't. It's challenging. I think we would probably both agree on the fact that acting is sort of similar to someone who's running their own business. There's no one there to tell you have to do this next and
exactly.
Spend this time. It's like you need to figure out a way to create a schedule, and you're the only one who's holding yourself accountable. Some actors can create a support group, or they can work with a career coach or something like that who holds them accountable. But in general, it's really important to make sure that you're constantly doing something. And if you're finding yourself spending too much time eating Chipotle and watching Netflix shows and stuff, then
maybe you need to reevaluate your life.
Yeah, you need to really
I do. I mean, listen, it's a tough business. It's a competitive business. If you have some weaknesses, like say, I'm not really good at memorizing, it takes me some time, then you're going to have to work at that. You're going to have to get it to a manageable level because there are people that can do those things very easily. The bar is set pretty high. So, like I said, you have to take this seriously. It has to be your full-time job. And, you have to stay in shape with it. And you also have to keep, a good mental state of health, because I see actors get in their heads a lot, or they get depressed on not booking, or I get the call back, but I'm not booking. What am I doing wrong? It doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. If you understood how many things are out of your control. I mean, I had a situation where the team was split on two people for a role, and they could not come to a consensus, and therefore we had to see new people. So it had nothing to do with both actors. They were wonderful. But literally because the team could not come to a consensus, we had to see more people. Mm-hmm. So sometimes it could be that, Sometimes it could be like, oh, I'm changing the role to a woman, so, then you're no longer considered. Sometimes the role's written out, There's just so many things that I don't think actors realize that are out of their control. And, I think my friend Grant Shaw said it best. He said, look, I get the roles I'm supposed to get. And, if you come at it that way, you can have a healthy career.
That's smart,
Yeah.
And for the roles that you don't get, I usually...
They weren't meant for you.
They weren't meant for you, but there's also
wasn't your
maybe
time.
you could look at that and be like, maybe there was a reason that I didn't get that. Maybe it's because I need to spend this time. Now I have the time to work on whatever training, or now I have the time to do this other thing that needs to be done, you know?
Exactly. Look, nothing ever happens when you want it to. I mean, that's just life.
Yeah.
It'll happen when it's supposed to.
Yeah, that's smart. I like that. So here's a question that honestly I don't know whether you'll have a good answer to, but it's just something that a lot of actors wish that they could ask casting directors, and that is, what would you say to an actor who wishes that they were able to somehow get feedback after an audition? Is there any way that they could not probably get directly feedback from you, unless it's maybe like just one person, but then there would be like everybody, you know? But what would you say to somebody who's like, how do I actually find out, like, what the real reason was that I wasn't booked? It could be helpful to them if they knew.
Well, I think I think if they have representation, sometimes the reps will call us afterwards and just be like, how did they do? Or, I find it happens more often with maybe a newer client, just so they can get feedback of where their levels are at. I think it's more difficult if you don't have representation, because I certainly don't want you emailing or postcarding or calling and being like, how did I do?
Totally.
Then it just kind of gets awkward. I mean, I get it. I get why, you want to know. But I think you just have to keep in mind that what I just said before, there's all kinds of factors. Sometimes maybe I'm like, oh, you have a little bit more edge, than I imagined, and that doesn't fit with this role. Or you're too tall, or, you remind the director of his ex-wife. You know what I mean? Like I said, I think if you keep focusing on those kind of things, I think you just gotta, do the stuff and then move on, and let it go. You know?
I have a follow-up question on that. I mean, what you're saying sounds very much like as if me, a business owner, if I was to somehow call all of the web visitors who go onto our website and ask them, why did you not contact us? It's kind of like impossible to do.
Right.
Would you answer an actor who did get the part if they say, why did I get the part?
Well, you got the part because you fit the part.
Yeah,
I mean,
would I guess, yeah, I mean, they fit the part, but if they said, like, did you find anything interesting? Was it because of, like, my physical appearance? Was it because of, like, do actors, like, would that be okay if an actor ever asked something like that?
Like, when would you ask that? After you book the role?
Yeah, if they book a role, let's say that you booked an actor and they're like, oh, thanks so much, I'm very excited to be a part of this. Just out of curiosity, I know that there's thousands of other actors that you saw. What made you most interested in me, for instance?
I don't think you need to ask that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, you got the job. So all the parts fit together.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So then what if I say, oh, because you were the right height and that was the only reason we hired you? And then what are you going to take from that?
Yeah, that's true.
You know what I'm saying? I mean, I'm trying to be light about it, but I don't think it's useful. I think you just have to be like, okay, great, out of all the people they auditioned, they picked me. Mm-hmm. I'm happy for whatever the reasons were.
Excellent. And then the final part of this question, this was something that was posed to me from an actor, this little set of questions that we're asking here on feedback. So the last part is just in terms of getting feedback. If an actor sort of has a relationship with a casting director already, and they're kind of like, they email occasionally or communicate, do you think it's ever appropriate for them to, in that case, ask for feedback?
I'd rather you not.
Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, I think you just have to feel good that, we liked you enough to bring you in. And if it doesn't work out this time, it doesn't work out. But I'm not part of that equation. Who decides that?
Okay, excellent. So, in general, that is definitely something that actors want to stay away from because it can also make the casting director, I would say, probably feel a little bit uncomfortable because one, they might not have necessarily been the final deciding factor, so they don't know all the reasons, and then
Well, we
also,
never are. I mean,
yeah,
we can influence, but we don't ultimately have the decision. I mean, that's not our job. Our
yeah,
job is to present art to our client. We have to fill a need.
hmm
And so that we're the facilitator in that regard. But after that, it goes somewhere else. Like I said earlier,
yeah,
I think the best thing you can do if we bring you in for something and you audition and you end up not getting it for whatever reason, follow up and say thanks for having me in.
hmm yeah. That's
Good luck
perfect.
on your project. You know what I mean? Because it's not awkward, and what's said is like, hey, Kim brought me in for this role. Like, she likes my work. She thinks I can do it. I mean, I'm
hmm
not bringing people in to sabotage them. I'm not
No,
bringing them
of
in
course.
because I want to make them uncomfortable and not book the role. I have to fill a need, and I'm hoping you'll be that person.
Excellent.
So, I
Yeah.
mean, you have to come at it that way.
It's definitely I like this because it's really good to see this perspective for actors because like I said, I've cast for some of my own films, and I've had a couple of actors when I was doing that reach out and say, why didn't I get the part? And I actually emailed two of them and gave them the honest reason, and like both of them got like really annoyed and were like, whoa, what, and so it's like I never wanted to do that again because it puts me in a really
It's
awkward,
awkward.
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you. That's excellent for actors to be able to know that. Let's see. So let's just talk a little bit about your advice on creating relationships and networking. How do you recommend actors go about networking with casting directors and producers or people, filmmakers? And how should they keep in touch with you? And are there things that they definitely should not do besides what we just talked about?
Yeah, I don't know that there are many of us that are like, go to like networking events. I mean, I know they exist. I've been asked maybe 2 times in my 16-year career
hmm
to do something like that. Honestly, it's awkward for me. All of a sudden, people are just vying to talk to you and put their headshots in front of you and their cards, and
hmm
it's just a bit much. You know what I mean? I'm definitely one of these people, which is probably why I'm on the other side of the camera. I like to just do my work and then go home and not deal. But I think, a lot of us teach, and so there's a lot of places in the city. I'm on average 2 or 3 times a week out and about doing a class or a workshop, so that I have another opportunity to meet you,
Yeah.
because I wouldn't otherwise if you didn't come to my office via an agent or a manager. And these relationships take time. They take years to build. I need to see your work a few times for me to really understand where you're at as an actor. So I think, and I know it can get expensive, and so what I tell actors is like, look, like if you can get into a multi-week class with somebody, that's best because we'll have time with you. One night workshops are great for me if I haven't seen you in 2 years, and it's a nice kind of like, hey, I'm still out there. You know what I mean? I mean, it's fine. You'd have to blow my socks off if I had a night workshop with you. You know what I mean? Where I was like, oh. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm just saying, like, and also target the people who are casting things that you feel you would be right for. If you're like, yeah, I can see myself on Blacklist or Blue Bloods or Law and Order or Homeland or something, that's really my groove, then, try to seek out those people and take their workshops and their classes or seminars. If you are not of the comedy world, then don't waste your money trying to put your work in front of people that cast comedies. It just kind of, makes sense,
Yeah.
and just be strategic about stuff like that. Stay in touch with postcards or emails, and take notes, because each casting director you meet is going to have a different way they want to be reached. I love postcards. I actually read my mail. I'm not a big fan of email, but then Nick Picaro in my office loves email.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's 2 generations of how we like to be kept in touch. And for me, I mean, I'd have to have a personal relationship with you for you to, for emailing. But postcards are great. I read my mail at the end of the week. I sit down. I can take in the information in a different way than when I'm scrolling through emails trying to hit the stuff that I've got to pay attention to. A lot of times they'll get lost or I won't have time to read it, And I have a Facebook page that actors can follow me on, and I write some tips on there, and you can send me a message like, here's my reel when you get a chance, And I just feel like when I can separate those, you know what I mean? It's like when you go to open up your social media, you're kind of prepared to take the information in a different way. You're not looking to prioritize things and, whatnot. So
yeah,
that's what I'd say on that.
And sometimes I feel like in general, especially, again, I guess all of us are subscribed to newsletters and different things like that, but a lot of people, when they send stuff out, whether it's a postcard or a newsletter or like just an email, it can often feel like, look at me, especially actors. They'll some of them worry about that, some just don't, and they're blatantly self-promotional. But I feel like from your perspective, I mean, I'd love for you to comment a little bit on that. Just, you're probably more so interested in, you appreciate more when people recognize maybe something that you did. Like if you just helped put together a really big production and someone was like, hey, congratulations on that. I went and saw it. It was amazing. And I know that you were involved. Versus if they're like, hey, look at this new project that I'm in. Do you have anything to say about that?
Okay. So, I mean, your job is to promote yourself, right? So I don't need you to pour it on me, about how wonderful I am. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, if let's say I brought you in for an audition, it's nice to get that note saying, thanks for bringing me in. Good luck with the project. Looking forward to working with you again soon. Simple, short, sweet, right? But yeah, of course. I mean, look, I want to know what you're doing. Are you in a class? Did you just book something? Are you back from tour? Whatever it is. But I mean, right when you have something to say, if I just get like happy spring, it's like, okay, that's fine. Or like, what are you working on? And I think I like postcards because they're easy to read, they're accessible. Some people, they feel like, oh, I'm going to get attention if I send it in a bright orange envelope that's hermetically sealed, in bubble wrap for my headshot. And you're like, okay, now I have to work at opening this thing up. And like, do you know what I mean? Like, or, don't send a 12-month calendar of you, because I've had that, I've gotten some interesting little things in the mail. People have sent me lottery tickets and scratch-offs and candy, and somebody sent the condom once. I don't know what the point of that was.
Oh, my God.
Yeah. Like, I get that you want to stand out, but that's probably not the way to do it.
Yeah, totally.
So, like I said, here again, for me, short and sweet. I don't need a litany. I don't need pages of your, bio and, then your little postcard and then, maybe some cute sticker and, stuff. That's just silly.
Yeah. So in general, it's more so like you appreciate when they send you something that's like, hey, this is a project that I'm in. I hope that everything is going well, blah, blah, blah. But they don't need to, be crazy about it. And they also, it's just literally keeping a very simple, friendly, amicable relationship open with you. Nothing too crazy.
Yeah. Like I said, short and sweet. Hey, I'm on Blue Bloods Thursday night at 8 p.m. Hope you can check it out. Or just finished Esper Studio 2-year program. Recently got new headshots. Getting ready to, do this play at this place. Hope you're well. I like that.
Awesome. Cool. So we're almost done here. One other question, though, that came up from from some actors was, How does an actor go about getting any like legitimate film and television work without an agent? Because it's very difficult to get the breakdowns for those types of projects.
Hmm. Well, I mean, it's tough. You've got to start somewhere. I mean, I would never put it on your resume, but like, I think it's really kind of cool if you're first starting out, you really have nothing. Like, do some background work.
Hmm.
Don't put it on your resume, but do some background. Like, get on a set, see how it works. You might meet somebody on there. At some point. Um, I mean, I've brought in people from workshops and seminars that I've done that don't have agents. I have a project that I think they're right for.
Hmm.
So it can happen that way. I mean, I get it. I mean, just, have all your materials together. If you don't have a reel, there are places in the city now that will, for some money, will put together a professional scene for you. They'll write it for you. They'll give you the lighting and the direction and the sound and everything. And, so you have something,
Yeah.
that we can look at. So there's different, different ways to do that. There's no one way.
Yeah.
You know?
Sometimes actors feel like it's super challenging for them because the agents usually only want to see people who have professional credits, and then the people to get professional credits need an agent. So they say it's kind of
So
like
you have to get credit. I know, it's like you have to have credit to get credit, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I get it. It is. It's like, really. I remember when I was younger, before I got my first credit card, I took out like a fashion bug card because they would hand them out like candy. And then I went and bought some clothes, and then I paid it off, and then I applied for my visa. So it's sometimes you got to go that way. But yeah, I mean, and do the student films. You never know. These guys could be, the next Quentin Tarantino or something.
Yeah, totally.
You know?
Networking with up and coming filmmakers is a huge strategy that I kind of
Absolutely.
teach to actors. Like, you become friends with them, and they don't have the gatekeepers, but if they're doing some cool stuff and you keep in touch with them, 5 years from now you could be like on something really cool.
Absolutely. I mean, even for us as casting directors, I mean, it's not like, our work comes in and when it comes in, you know what I mean? Like, we wait for the next job to come to us,
Hmm.
and so we have to build our relationships too. And like, as a small example, an actor had emailed me a few years ago. He was a New York-based actor, had taken a class of mine, and he was now associate professor at the University of Nebraska at the Johnny Carson School for Theater and Film. And he said, we've got, this huge endowment that Johnny left, and I'm looking to help build their program. And I remember your class, and I liked your teaching style, and was wondering if you'd like to come out and work with my students. So I said, sure, when am I going to go to Nebraska, right? So I get out to Nebraska, and through him, he introduces me to a director and a producer who are doing a short in Nebraska. And the producer's from LA, and so is the director. So I meet with them, and they're like, well, hey, do you want to cast our short? And I said, okay, sure. So I ended up making a relationship with them through an email that I answered from a guy that met me years ago. Do you see what I mean? Crazy.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. It's relationship building.
Hmm.
Work with these people. There's groups of. I mean, AGR. They've got a great group of actors. They write for each other. One directs, one stars in it. One, you know what I mean. And then they get into film festivals and they build, and they're building this community, and it's awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, so for our final question, out of everything that you've seen working in the industry, what would you say are like one or two things that you think are most helpful in moving actors' their careers forward, especially if they're sort of like seemingly stuck at a plateau or something? Have you seen like anything that might be very helpful for them?
Go to therapy.
That's definitely, actually, that is helpful for people. It's very helpful.
Go to therapy and get a hobby. Yeah, because sometimes I think people get a little imbalanced about the whole thing too. It's like, on one hand I'm saying, yeah, do something towards your craft every day, but then like, go do something else too. Like, work on your person, outside of your craft.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, man. I don't think there's one way to get there. It's not a straight road.
Yeah, no, of course.
I think it's just like a bunch of different things that sort of align when they're supposed to, and
Yeah,
it'll happen when it's supposed to happen. I mean, I
yeah,
don't mean to sound sort of like philosophy ambiguous or whatever you want to call it. Like just, it's
yeah.
I just say yes to everything.
I definitely think that sometimes actors can sort of get kind of like caught up in not like remembering what their real goals are related to moving their career forward. And sometimes, an actor might go for 5 or 6 or 7 years doing the same things, but then they sort of like kind of like look and they go, what I'm doing isn't really what I'm truly passionate about. And then when they kind of reset their goals, it kind of almost changes some of the stuff that they do.
Yeah, well, I mean, I had a woman, she was older and, she raised her family and everything, and she was like, it's my time and I've always wanted to do this. And, she was taking classes all the time. I said something one night to the class, like, if you don't have to do this, like, go do something else. You know what I mean? It's got to feed you every day. You've got to want it, right? And she ended up writing me a letter, and she said, I needed to hear that because I have not been happy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think I'm going to go do something else. Now, I wasn't thrilled that maybe I had a part of her her leaving the business, but I think sometimes you have to like take an assessment.
Yeah.
You should always have your goals. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? All that kind of stuff. But if you're just sitting and spinning your wheels, time to reevaluate.
Mm-hmm.
What's something different than I can do? Or maybe I have to add this to my routine, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Totally.
If you're still spinning your wheels after 20 years, I don't know. It's not happening.
Yeah.
So it's hard. Like I said, it has to feed you. As long as you wake up and this is the only thing you can see yourself doing, you'll find something of value from it. But if you're not and you're just struggling and it's just becoming tedious and stuff, it's like, maybe these are signs.
Yeah, I mean, and even just taking some time off from it is an option as well, see how you feel after taking time off. You don't have to like be like, all right, this is it, I quit, but it's 3, 4, 6 months or something, and it can definitely help. Excellent.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to say?
I don't know.
Everybody,
I just all those things I said. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Find the joy in it. We're so lucky to do what we do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's how you have to feel. You have to feel that you're very, very fortunate, and be grateful for it, and don't look at it as like this is the most intense, challenging thing. I mean, if you enjoy challenges, then that's fine. But if you're looking at it as like, I hate this and stuff, then you definitely are not doing it.
Well, what I would say, look, we're very lucky. We're not saving lives. We get to play.
Mm-hmm.
And find the joy in that, and count yourself blessed that you get to do what you get to do. You know what I mean? I know you're going to have some days you don't feel like that. That's okay. You're human. But, like I said, and find the joy and remain curious. You will always continue to grow as long as you're curious.
Yes. And remember that casting directors are your friends. They're on your side. They're not.
Yes, we are.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. This was absolutely amazing. I'm sure actors are going to learn a ton of stuff. I learned a lot of things right now. And just to, have you take out some time from your day to chat here, on behalf of everyone who's going to listen to this, thank you. This was amazing.
Oh, thanks, Martin. Appreciate it.